It's not uncommon that you have to deal with multiple files or entire directory structures, either to download them or to send them to someone else, or possibly you just want to keep a copy of them someplace. That can be challenging in that, for example, I want to attach something to an email. Well, attaching an entire directory structure to an email doesn't work. Instead, you have to somehow convert that directory structure into a single file that is generally compressed, so it's smaller than what all the contents started off as. There are a number of ways to do this on the Linux command line. One command for doing so is called tar. Tar is an archiving tool. It actually doesn't make files smaller. It just goes through and globs things up together. So if I wanted to tar, C is for creating what's called a tarball. F is for the fact that I want this to go to a file. Turns out you can tar to other things instead of a file. Well, I'm going to be, first I have to give the file that I want. So files.tar. If I'm making a tarball, I'll typically end it in .tar so that I know that that's what it is later. And I'm going to take and tar up all my txt files as well as my not.txt.other file. And if we look, you'll see that now there is a file.tar here, which has all of those things inside of it. If I want to look at the contents of this, instead of doing a, let's just type it, I can do a tf, a file.tar, and that will show me the contents of the tarball. If I was going to take those files back out, I would do an xf to extract from the tarball, which in this case will just write over my files with what I had coming out of the tarball, which was the same thing. As I said, tar does not make things smaller on its own. However, you can use tar to make stuff smaller. Instead of just saying cf, I am going to put a z in here, and that will use a different utility called gzip. And actually, if I were going to do that, I would probably also not just call this a .tar. I'll either call it a tar.gz or I will call it a tgz. As you note, this file is significantly smaller than the one before it. Gzip is a utility that will zip up individual files for you. It uses a type of compression to make them smaller. And when you get a file of this type, it typically ends in .gz. If I were to zip up one of these files, you would see that it keeps the same name, but it adds a .gz at the end. My original is gone when I use gzip. If I want my file back, I can unzip it, and that gives me back that. If I want to pull the contents out of this file, the gzf will not only pull things out, but will also expand on the compression. Of course, these are pretty much Linux specific. Maybe some Mac stuff will be transmitted around in tarred gzip files, but lots of, probably the most common form of compression and archiving is actually just zip files. And zip has a -r option that will allow you to take entire directories. Tar works with entire directories automatically. With zip, if you want to put an entire directory structure inside of a zip file, you would use the -r option. And so you can see that we do zip. We can give it the options that we want. We can list the zip file, and then we can list what files we want to go into it, and that will create a .zip, which then we could later unzip with the unzip command. Why is it important for you to know these things? Well, When you go to install Scala on your machine, you're going to have to potentially install Java, you're going to install the Scala, and those are going to come in compressed files. They will either be .zips or they will be .tgzs or .tar.gzs. So they're either going to be zipped up tarballs or they're going to be zip files. And you need to at least know how to either use an unzip to expand out a zip file, or how to use tar with the xf or xzf in order to get the contents out of them.